victims. You know what I'm saying? Like I grew
Yes.
up in poverty. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in horrific
Yes.
poverty, violence, abuse. That's where I come from. Forget the fact that I got 13 books. Forget the fact that I travel in the country speaking. Forget all of that stuff for a second. I come from horrific poverty, violence, and abuse, which means that I was traumatized literally from the time I came out of my mama's womb, which means that I engaged in all kinds of behavior that was probably more than likely was self-destructive and self-sabotaging at times.
Sure.
Do you blame me or do you blame the system that creates ghettos in the first place that
Mm.
leads people to do the kind of things that they do? What often happens is that we'll skip over the systems of oppression, the systems of discrimination, the systems of injustice, i.e. sexism, i.e. racism. And what we do is say, well, what's wrong with these parents? What's wrong with these women? What's wrong with black people? We come down hard on all these different folks, but we never say anything about white supremacy, about white
Mm-hmm.
racism, about capitalism, the things that exploit people every single day. I've been to all 50 states in America. I've been to every city you can name, major city, medium-sized city in this country. There's a ghetto everywhere I go. That says to me that this is intentional. I can go to any space right now, and in America, 1 out of 4 women and girls are survivors of sexual violence. 1 out of 3 on the planet. That means that 1 billion women and girls on the planet are the survivors of sexual violence, most of the time at the hands of men, which says to me there's a crisis in
Sure.
how we define manhood globally.
Sure.
So instead of saying that, we start talking about all these different things that are going on, and we don't get to the real issue, which is the problem, as Dr. King said at the end of his life over and over again. Read or listen to his Vietnam War speech. Listen to Malcolm throughout his life. It's the
Mm-hmm.
system that is the problem because it pits people against each other. It turns people into animals. It makes us hyper-materialistic. It makes us anti-intellectual. And then you put all this weight on people, and then you tell them, get up off under that weight, and you need to figure this thing out. No, the problem is the system that produces people, not just the R. Kelly, but the men in the barbershop, the Harvey Weinstein, the
Yep.
Bill Cosby's, people that we don't know who engage in destructive behavior towards women and girls, just like the system brainwashes and teaches white people that they're superior and the rest of us are inferior. Donald Trump
Yep.
is just a symptom. We could get stuck on Donald Trump and R. Kelly all day, all night on all kinds of conversations.
Sure.
But then we're ignoring that there's a whole range of people who engage in the very same behavior. They're simply not famous. And so that's what I want us to focus on because it really is what Dr. King was talking about. This is about power and
Mm-hmm.
privilege, you
Yeah.
know, and we need to, if we're serious about justice, and then we got to be serious about challenging the power and privilege because the last thing I want to do is condemn my own people,
Right.
condemn poor people, or condemn women, you know, or condemn parents for trying to do the best that they can and give the system a break over and over again because that actually to me is cowardly. It doesn't take courage to condemn those people. It takes courage to say white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy are the oppressions that we need to name on a consistent basis. That's how I feel as an activist and as a leader in this country.
Yeah, and you know, Kevin, you raised some good points, but the other thing with that is that even though we've dealt with some horrific things over the years, you know, everything from Jim Crow to, you know, EEOC issues and so forth, I still think that we still have an obligation to have the mama bear syndrome.
Mm.
Now, I absolutely agree. There are some crazy things that have happened out here, and I'm sure all of us could probably fill this room with stories of injustices.
Sure.
I just and what I mean by that is that there were some symptoms that were very obvious when this thing was going down, and there's still obvious symptoms that people. I know as we watched it the other night, it was like, what? Wait a minute, what? You know, and my point is that when you see the symptoms of that make the hair on your neck stand up, at some point you have to say, wait a minute, let me at least step back and see what's going on here. Now that certainly doesn't negate the symptoms of racism and prejudice internally and externally. I mean, if we really get to it, but I still think at the end of the day, no one will protect the babies better than Mama and Papa Bear.
Absolutely.
But I think the thing is when you grow up in an impoverished situation, maybe those parents are thinking the best thing for their child is to go off with this person who has all this money and take that risk.
Well,
It sounds crazy, but it's like, if your daughter sings and she's gonna get mentored by R. Kelly, like, of course the hair on the back of your neck is gonna raise, but you've been poor for years. So it's like, do I listen to that, or do I push my kid with this millionaire, you know?
Well, I want to interject and just share this some balance there, because I've grown up in very humbling of a very humbling environment. And I know the system is corrupt, but I do not look to the system to provide responsibility for me. I have to be responsible regardless of what I was raised in or where I came from. And so just because I grew up in a very impoverished environment does not mean my children are up for sale. Like you were saying, because he's R. Kelly, he's our meal ticket. No. As a parent, I'm responsible. And although a system influences a mindset, I have to learn how to educate myself to go against what's being provided. And I do understand that the system is set up for us to become products of our environment. And it takes strong individuals to make those stands and take those stands and go against what has been provided. I agree with the chief. I still look at those parents and I say, where is your responsibility, or where are your responsibilities? I don't care who you are. R. Kelly, Prince, Michael Jackson, whomever it is, and I'm just naming very, influential people. I don't care who it is. I'm not going to look at you and see you as a meal ticket, especially when I am acquainted with your history. See, a child is going to be.
Let me. I'm sorry, brother. Go right ahead. I'm sorry. Pardon me.
No. I was going to say, a child is going to be a child. The Bible says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I understood as a child. And so I don't look for young people to have a mentality as an adult. And so it is my job as a parent to think when they cannot. When they are amazed at stardom, it is my responsibility to make sure that their expectations are regulated. Now, I'm not saying that what they were brought up in, it didn't play a part in it. However, as a parent, just because I was brought up in something does not mean I relinquish my parental responsibility in rearing and covering and protecting my child. Brother Kevin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and I appreciate this conversation greatly. I'm glad that I'm humbled to be a part of it. I just want to say this because I think, this is ultimately also about a conversation about leadership, the kind of black leadership that we need, and really American leadership we need. What's been missing, I believe, from the very beginning, the genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement of African people, is honesty and integrity and a holistic view of everything. I really believe that, because we're talking about a nation that was founded, quote unquote, in trauma, from the very beginning. And when I'm listening, I'm saying to myself, I go to a doctor. I don't expect to tell the doctor, what's on the doctor's job, because she, he, or they have the skill sets. I just came from my therapy session. My therapist, a black man who's been doing this for 50 years, has the skill sets. And so I think it's really important. Like, let's be real about it. If you want to be honest, I can't tell you how many people, middle class and poor black folks, have asked me to talk with their children because all of us out here trying to survive. Right. And what I'm getting at, let me finish with all due respect. What I'm getting at is that I just don't want us as leaders, because just having a platform, it doesn't matter what the platform is, that we fall into a kind of elitism where we're victim blaming and we're saying, well, the system. Let me say this with all due respect. The first 18 years of my life, I was a self-hating Negro, a self-hating black person. I knew nothing about black history, black culture. I didn't have the skill sets to articulate anything about what was going on. Once I became woke, as we say in these times, and that took very serious study over the course of several years, digesting things about African-American history, Afro-Canadian, the Caribbean, Africa, all of it, I had to move from self-hatred over to self-love. And then I had to manifest that self-love in action as a servant, like Jesus, for our communities.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, let me finish. I've been doing this work for a very long time, so I'm able to I can look at the whole picture. But it's unfair for me if I work with young people, a person whose family member was killed by the police, for example, to say, well, y'all need to step out there and be prepared to deal with this thing when they have had no experiences whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? In this space, they don't know. They simply don't know. And it's our job as responsible and accountable leaders to love our people unconditionally, not with conditions,
right.
Unconditionally. Practice the 3 C's. I'm going to say it again. What's the context of why people are behaving the way they're doing? Have compassion, which is the love, like Jesus did. And then you can challenge, because you challenge with love and context, and you're also helping people to get the tools that they need so they can do this stuff for themselves. Because the best thing that a leader can do is to teach other people how to be self-empowered, how to be leaders. That's what's missing from the conversation, because part of the problem is there's a bankruptcy, by and large, with black leadership around the country. And I'm talking about all of us. Talking about all of us.
Good.
Where I've been a part of this conversation so many times over the past 30 years, where it keeps coming back down to blaming the victims. And I'm saying, hey, have we forgotten the messages of Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Dr. King, Malcolm X, W.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, a wide range of sisters and brothers? We never said that we're not going to do anything because the system is oppressing us. Our whole history speaks of the resiliency of black people. But what I'm saying is, as a leader, the last thing I ever want to do is let the system off the hook, and just more conversation is focused on these people as if they're not our people. I think that's very dangerous. And that's when we start to move from self-love back over to self-hatred. And I can't support that. I just can't support that.
And Kevin, you bring up some great points. And we have a caller here that's been holding. And caller, you're on the air with Straight No Chaser and our guest, Kevin Powell. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to speak on the terms of the effects of what's happening. I know we're targeting R. Kelly, but I'm looking at the effects of what has been happening with R. Kelly, and how so many of our young people, those especially the millennials, are actually trying to copy him because they see him as a worshiping person. Now, R. Kelly has been speaking about his faults and his fantasies in his music for years. And just recently he said, I've been asking for help all these years and no one has helped me. He said, so I challenged people to help me. They didn't help me. Now it's too late. It's 30 years. It's too late. So he's becoming even more damaging. And that 19-minute song that he put out talking about, yes, he admits he did everything. He's guilty. And it's too late. It's too late for everything that has happened. Of course, that's what he's saying. But then the courts are using a system that is in the books. Just like some judges determine that they're going to try to kick him to the curb, but they have to use the books. My concern is the young men and the young women who feel that it's okay. We're not, all of us are saying it's definitely not okay, but there are some young men and women that believe that what's going on with R. Kelly is okay. For instance, R. Kelly is actually a sexual deviant. It didn't just happen. It's been over the years. Whether he was molested before or not, it's just he grew up being a sexual deviant. He has fantasies that he wants to act out. And there are women who have fantasies. They want to act out. But women don't act out their fantasies like men do. It's not unusual for a woman or young girl to go out. She's going out against her parents' will and staying out with this person overnight. Ends up, I had a case where someone spoke to me that it ended up that they were there in this man's house, boyfriend they called, house with no clothes on and no food, and had been there for 2 days waiting for him to return. And the guys think it's funny. Oh yeah, that's right. And then there are some cases I've heard where the men ask their so-called girlfriend to act out the sexual exploitations in front of others. That's not unusual what's happening. You look at the picture of 50 Shades of Grey. Dakota Johnson is a beautiful white young lady, has two famous parents, Melanie Griffin and Don Johnson. Don Johnson cannot stand the fact that his daughter's making these movies. She exposes her body. Sometimes there's a double, sometimes there's not. But then the acts that are being portrayed, the abusive sexual acts that are being portrayed. some years ago, sexual deviation had a definition that's different than the definition today. Years ago, you wouldn't even talk about, for instance, different acts and sexual behavior. But today, it's become a norm.